Hey, this is Scott MacKay, and you're listening to The Northern Report with Sean Burns.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, friends. Welcome to The Northern Report. I'm your host, Sean Burns, and I'm coming right at you from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Here on The Northern Report, I aim to shine a light on emerging and existing Canadian talent, as well as some of the legends we're still lucky to have with us. My guest on today's show is Scott MacKay. Scott's latest effort, Stupid Cupid, was released back in January of this year. I wrote about it in the Honky-Tonk Times and was eager for the chance to politely interrogate Scott about his new album and the journey that led him there. Now, far as I can recall, Scott and I haven't met in person before, but like many fellow musicians and artists, we've become friends and followers of one another online. As you're about to hear, Scott is a total gentleman, and I was really happy he took the time to share his story and tell us more about Stupid Cupid and his life and experiences with music. Thanks for tuning in, friends, and I hope you'll enjoy my chat with Scott MacKay.
Hello,
Scott MacKay.
Sean. How you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good.
I guess this is the first time we've ever had a real conversation.
I think so, unless, I know I saw you at, Calgary Folk Festival songwriting competitions over the years, but I don't know if we actually ever spoke at them or not.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump right in if that's cool with you.
Sounds good.
You're in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island?
I am, yeah.
Are you from there originally?
I'm from a really, really small area called Mount Herbert, but it's like a little community. There's no store or anything like that. It's like the way it works in PEI is there's might be a 3-kilometer area that gets designated with this community name, but it's not like a town or anything necessarily. But yeah, Mount Herbert is where I grew up. It's kind of more in the country, and then I live in Charlottetown now. Charlottetown,
for the folks that aren't familiar with the Canadian geography, I mean, you're quite far east, and Charlottetown is a beautiful little city. I guess it'd be your biggest market on the island there.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's beautiful.
So, what kind of music were you hearing growing up in Prince Edward Island?
My mom sang in church and stuff like that, and listened to a lot of country music growing up. She listened to a lot of country music, and her family listened to a lot of country music, but it was more like the stuff you heard on the radio, like Shania Twain and the 90s country is what was on in our house for the most part.
Were you enjoying that stuff when you were a kid?
I don't know. I feel like I was indifferent to it. We would have singing contests as kids, and mom would put them on, and we'd be singing "Whose bed have your boots been under," and not having no idea really what that lyric meant at the time. But I remember really liking Shania Twain growing up, and through high school, and then after high school, I kind of got too cool for country, and then kind of started exploring more indie stuff, and kind of went through a period of time there where I was not really into country so much, and then I kind of circled back around later on and got back into it.
You must have been bussed into a larger community for school, or were you in your town?
Yeah, we were bussed into Charlottetown for school.
How far is that?
Not very far. It was only a 15-minute bus ride kind of thing.
That's not bad. So you get this real rural situation kind of when you're at home, but then you're still exposed to the city, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it was weird. Growing up, there was fields in front of our house and behind our house, but yet we could see Charlottetown. It was only a 10-minute drive. So it was this kind of great, just in the country kind of thing, but still close to town. So it worked out well.
You're a really, really great singer, man. I've been really enjoying your voice. Have you been singing your whole life? Like you said, you were singing when you were a kid. Is it something that you were always comfortable doing, or you kind of felt confident in?
Yes and no. So we did sing around the house and stuff like that, but I remember singing along to songs on the radio and thinking like, oh, like I'm not a good singer because some of the songs I couldn't sing. And at that point, I didn't understand what keys were and stuff like that. So there'd be songs playing, I just couldn't hit notes, or be too high or too low. And it really wasn't until I started playing guitar and figured out that you can actually alter keys that I figured out I could sing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you start playing?
I was a late bloomer. I didn't start playing until second year university, like 22.
Wow, really?
Yeah. I was played hockey growing up. I was a goalie and just always into sports growing up. And then after that ended, I just always wanted to learn how to play guitar and sing and stuff like that. And a buddy of mine was getting guitar lessons, so I said, "Yeah, why not?" And then it just kind of went from there. You know, you learn how to play guitar, and then you learn cover songs, and then eventually get into writing your own songs, and then it just keeps going and going.
What kind of cover tunes you playing in those early days?
Early days would have been, again, at that time I didn't really listen to a whole lot of country at that time, so I was singing more like what do you think, like Paolo Nutini, and like soul music and some like Bob Dylan stuff. And I was really choosing songs more for the performance aspect of it rather than the content. I think when I was 22, 23, I wasn't necessarily listening for lyrics. I was more listening for just melody and things that I could sing.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, as I started writing more, I started really owning in and listening to lyrics more so.
Is that something you still focus on? Because I know for me, like sometimes I'm the same. I'm really focused on the story, on the lyrics, and other times I just want to put something on that doesn't command my attention like that, like just something that's nice to listen to.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think it's, yeah, there's certain songs that, like when I listen to soul music, for instance, or even like classic country too, sometimes the lyrics aren't like outstanding, but the melody is great, and it's nice to listen to, and it's all on the performance. And sometimes it's nice just to sit back and kind of let that wash over you rather than having to think about the story or yeah.
So were you in university in Prince Edward Island, or did you have to leave for that?
Yeah, I went to the University of Prince Edward Island and got a biology degree, and then I went to University of New Brunswick, which is in Fredericton, New Brunswick, which is 5 hours or so from Prince Edward Island, and I got my education degree there.
And you're just kind of focused on school and your education, and you're kind of playing around with your pals for fun and learning some cover tunes and stuff like that. You're not yet playing out, doing any gigs or anything?
Yeah, not yet. Like so I basically learned guitar the first couple of years, like second year, third year. And then the summer between third year and fourth year university, there's a venue owner here in Prince Edward Island that offered me 2 gigs in the summer. So I'd play once a week it was called the Globe then, but it doesn't exist anymore. And then I was also hosting open mic at a spot called Hunters a week in the summer. And that was like almost like a residency, I guess is what you would call it to some degree. But that was like my first introduction into playing, and it definitely taught me a lot.
Yeah, you got to get those hours,
yeah,
on the job.
Yeah, exactly.
So you end up in Alberta somehow.
Yeah. So my wife is an engineer, so it was when she graduated, we both graduated at the same time, and she was offered a job in Alberta, and so we decided to move out. We both were like homebodies and lived on PEI our whole lives. So it was a little nerve-wracking initially, moving somewhere so foreign, like the big city, Calgary, where there's millions of people and not hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, I bet.
So it was weird, but it was such a great experience, and I was introduced to such a great music community in Calgary that I wasn't really expecting, to be honest. I was kind of nervous moving away from a small community of people, and there's a great music scene here. There's a great one in Calgary too.
Yeah, there is, and there's a lot of places to play. There has historically been a lot of places to play, and a lot of musicians, and they're very supportive. And there's there is a good sense of community as far as music goes and live music. So you kind of cut your teeth out there. You start gigging and doing open mics in Calgary.
Yeah, exactly. So when I got there, I went to an open mic and just started playing. I'd released like an album in 2012 on PEI. And then my wife and I moved to Calgary, like basically as soon as I released it. And then I started writing and stuff when I got to Calgary more, and met a guy named Carter Felker.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
I had an open mic at Cafe Koi in Calgary, and pre-COVID, he would have groups of people over, and we'd just share songs and stuff like that. And he introduced me to John Prine, who I was embarrassed not to know who he was. And then once he introduced me to him, it just kind of sent me down this path of country music again, and getting into and exploring classic country and older stuff.
That must have blown your mind. Like I was very lucky growing up. My father was a musician his whole adult life until he passed on. And so there was moments when I was growing up where he would sort of force me to listen to a record from top to bottom. And he'd like, come here. And he did that with the first John Prine record when I was probably 16 or something. And I mean, I really enjoyed it, but I think, there's something to be said about being like an adult and hearing that and what that must feel like, a little more relatable.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. That's super cool that your dad did that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it turned out good for me in the end, for sure. So how long were you guys out in Alberta for?
We were there for 6 years.
Oh, damn, really?
Yeah.
So you haven't been home for too long now?
No, only a couple of years now.
And when you were out in Alberta, did you end up like starting to get some regular gigs, or were you still kind of doing the jams and stuff?
Yeah, no, I started getting more gigs. I recorded an album when I was out there with Leroy Stagger, and then toured around a little bit. Nothing crazy, but more just regional touring. And then played some showcases and stuff while I was in Calgary, and just tried to build my career as much as I could in there, and was nominated for a couple of awards when I was there and stuff like that, and really kind of began to establish myself in Calgary, which was awesome. And then like my wife and I, our plan was always to move home, try to raise a family here at PEI, just because we grew up here and we loved being raised here, so we had always planned to move back. So we decided to do that, and then release my third album in January, since moving back home. But majority of the songs were written while I was in Calgary.
Oh, cool. Okay. So I didn't realize that you made that record with Leroy. I definitely want to talk about Stupid Cupid, but let's just jump in. That record came out in 2015. It's called Twin.
Yes, yeah.
And you made that with Leroy. And did you have a steady band of people in Alberta, or did Leroy kind of take the lead and set the band up for you and make the calls?
A little bit of both. I had a guitar player that I always played with. Ben Como was his name. He plays bass with Carter Felker now. But yeah, so he played guitar, and then Leroy set up, fiddle players, and introduced me to Tyson Mako, who plays bass for him in a bunch of different bands. So he played bass on the album, and so a little bit of both. But
there's a song on that record called "Where the Enemy Sleeps," and that one seems to have got the most attention in terms of streams. You got to tell me how this happened. The song is used as a theme song for true crime podcasts, Over My Dead Body and Joe Exotic Tiger King. How did all that happen?
I know, so random. I wrote that song on PEI before I moved out to Calgary with a friend, and I was like, let's write a duet, kind of like a dark Johnny Cash duet kind of thing. So I ended up writing that song, and I'm not like crazy about the song, to be honest. Like melodically, I think it's neat and it sounds different, but I was never crazy. I was never like that into the lyrics and whatnot. So it's funny when like the songs that you necessarily don't champion, kind of the one that gets picked up. But I was playing pond hockey with a friend in Calgary, and he's like, "Did you realize one of your songs has like 500,000 streams?" And I was like, "No," because I just like hadn't checked, and it was picked up by a Southern Gothic playlist, like a Spotify official playlist. Just randomly, I didn't get any notification for it or anything like that. And it's a pretty popular playlist, so it just racked up some streams, and then Wondery is the company that produces a bunch of podcasts, and they produce the podcast Over My Dead Body, and they just reached out to me wondering if they could use the song as their theme song for season 1. And then for season 2, they're like, "We want to use the song again, but we're wondering if you could cover it." So they paid me to cover my own song, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah. And then it's random. And then even on PEI, we have this there's this music supervision conference that happens every year, and they invite different music supervisors, and I was presenting a bunch of different songs. I presented Where the Enemy Sleeps, and the guy in the audience came up to me and he's like, I actually like work with Wondery. He's like, "This is bizarre." Like this guy from California, like coming to PEI and bumping into, just like such a small world. Yeah.
That album is decidedly darker, like stylistically and sonically than Stupid Cupid. And are you still playing those songs? Are those songs that you still, are proud of, and an album that like the relationship with the album is still a positive one for you?
Yeah, for the most part. There's a song or two on there that I'm a little like cringy, or like a line or two, but I'm still proud of the album for sure. It is so. I was listening to a lot of like old timey music then, and I had just learned how to play the clawhammer banjo, so that was inspiring me to write kind of more in that gothic direction. And yeah, still proud of the songs, but they definitely don't work well in a show together. Like, yeah, so I don't know how I'm going to mix and match those two albums. They're just like, they're so different, so it'd be hard to do.
Hey there again, folks. As we approach the halfway point of today's episode, I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in. You're listening to the Northern Report podcast. I'm your host, Sean Burns, and our guest today is Scott MacKay. I'll remind you to follow along with the Northern Report podcast and playlist on Spotify, subscribe on Apple and Google Podcasts, listen on YouTube, our Anchor.fm page, or wherever you find your podcasts. After cutting his teeth in the Alberta scene, Scott headed back to the bright red mud of Prince Edward Island, and soon after began work on recording the songs that make up his latest album, Stupid Cupid. We'll talk about that and his plans for the future next. And you end up back on PEI, and you start to write tunes, I guess, that end up going on your latest record, Stupid Cupid.
Mm-hmm.
Did you co-produce that with Adam Gallant is the fella's name?
Yeah. Adam Gallant.
Gallant. Okay, so what's Adam's background, and what was the process of working with him on the album like?
Yeah, so he's a producer and a recording engineer here on PEI. And he yeah, he's mostly worked with like indie bands and stuff like that, but he's worked with some folk bands, and um, I really wanted to have like a live off the floor feel to the album and record it live off the floor, and that's something he hadn't really done in the past much. So we just had like some conversations, and we set it up so that we could do that. And he provided some, yeah, we just like, it was nice co-producing, and he wasn't pushy, and it was just like a nice, easy way to work. Um, yeah, I think it turned out nice. We did the bass, the drums, acoustic, and vocals all live off the floor, and then we overdubbed pedal steel and harmonies and electric guitar.
I was going to say, you've got Grant Siemens on electric guitars. You got Burke Carroll on pedal steel. These are two giants and super, super talented guys at what they do. And I guess you guys had just what they got to play on was kind of the final product. It was you and your rhythm section and your vocals.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they laid it on. So how did you hook up with Grant and Burke and with Scott Franchuk, who ends up being the guy who mixes the album?
So I reached out to my friend Mariel Buckley, who's an artist in Alberta, in the Americana country vein, and just said, I'm looking to record an album, and I want it to sound like Charlie Crockett's albums. So just like, I wanted like I like the old school sound, but I also want it to be like high fidelity. So Mariel had pointed me in Scott's direction. She's like, if you want to do a classic country record, Scott Franchuk's the man. And I asked Carter Felker, and he recommended the same thing. So I reached out to Scott, and then he said, yeah, I'd love to. My plan actually was going to travel out to Winnipeg and like rent a cabin and record it all live in a cabin and stuff, but COVID messed with those plans. But so we modified a bit, and then through Scott, he just got me in contact. He's like, oh, like you should reach out to Grant Siemens. And for me, I was like, Grant, like playing with Core Blonde and stuff like that, I was like nervous to reach out to him because he's such like a pro player, and Scott's just like, no, like he's the nicest guy in the world, like, and he's just phenomenal, like I'll get you in contact. So he got me in contact with Grant, and he was right, he is the nicest man in the world.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He's a good guy, yeah, and a ridiculous player.
Yeah, he really brings a lot to the table, and yeah, he covers a lot of space for one guy, and without getting in your way as a singer.
Yeah, it's foolish. It just it brought the songs to a whole other level. And when Adam, because I had brought these guys to Adam because Adam had some recommendations of PEI players and stuff. When Grant sent him back the tracks, he's like, holy shit, like this guy's ridiculous. Like, good job finding this guy. Like, I'm going to use him for stuff if I can in the future, because this is just ridiculous.
Were you a big Core Blonde fan?
I do love Core Blonde. Yeah, he's great. And I remember like growing up listening to him and watching him on TV and stuff like that, and got to see a few shows, like him playing at Calgary Folk Fest, and saw him at SAIT. And I'm a huge fan of him and his writing, and Carl and Bible on the Dash. I think it's just such a well-written song. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite song or any sort of highlight moments on the Stupid Cupid record that you're still kind of really proud of?
Like in the recording process kind of thing, like anything that jumps out maybe.
Yeah, or any kind of moments like that, when you're listening back now and it's like, been out and been released, had some time to breathe, like anything you hear where you're like, I really like that, that solo, or the way that I sang this, or the way that it kind of all came together.
Yeah, there were definitely a romance novel, like the bass player Sam Langell. Originally it was just kind of like the same music all the way through, and then he came up with the idea of kind of doing more of like a solo groove in the chorus to break it up. And I really love how that turned out. And just that whole song, how it, from how the vocals turned out to the rhythm section, everything, I just feel, just worked out really well. And then half of everything was a lot of fun to play. We only did one take. We just did the one take, and we're like, oh, that's it. And we just kept it. And for actually most of the songs, we only did like 2 or 3 takes, because I find after, like, I just get like, I don't know, like tired of singing them or playing them, or there's just like the energy or the excitement. Just I lose the excitement after third take.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you if you were pretty hands-on as far as the final mixing was concerned, or if you left most of those decisions up to Franny.
Yeah, I'd say like pretty hands-on to like as much as I can be. Like I'm not a recording engineer or a mixing engineer at all. It's more just if I hear something, can we change this? That's basically like to the extent. I'm not like throwing out frequencies or anything like that, or can we throw this reverb plate on this? Or like I'm not at that point, but definitely if I heard something that jumped out at me, I would ask Franny like, hey, can we try this differently, or could we put a little more reverb on this? But yeah,
there's one moment that really stands out to me. I think it's When She's Sleeping, that song, that there's like the bass player completely lays out for like the whole verse and then comes back in the chorus. Whose idea was that? Because that is super effective.
That was my idea, and it was actually post production. Like we had played the song back, and I was like, well, like it's one of my favorite songs I've ever written. But I was like listening to it, I was like, I'm just bored. Like I don't know, just like bored listening to it. Just kind of sounds like the same all the way through. So I was like, could we like cut the bass out and bring it in later on? Like, is that? And Adam was like, yeah, like they do it all the time in songs. So we did that, and it definitely did create a little more dynamic to allow the song to be more interesting.
Yeah, it's really effective, and something I've noticed on classic country records from the 60s, where usually it's like a kick drum that's out and then it comes back in, and all of a sudden you've got this like beef and life underneath everything. And like you said, yeah, it makes it more interesting when you're listening to a 4-minute song.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my favorite one, I think, on the record. Do you have a favorite one?
Yeah, that's my favorite too. Like, yeah, I was so proud of writing that one, because I wanted to write a classic cheating song with, but have it be like an original angle. And I feel like I found an angle that I hadn't heard before, and so it's in that classic country cheating vein, but is original. And yeah, really proud of that one for sure.
There's definitely a common thread and theme running throughout the record. Maybe not a theme record in the traditional sense of the term, but was this something that you'd set out to do, or did you just find that you were writing all these songs and they sort of fell into this storyline?
Yeah, I was just like writing, and kind of realized that I did have a batch of songs that had humor kind of woven throughout them. And I was listening to, like, I love Shel Silverstein and the stuff he's written for artists, and Bobby Bear and Roger Miller and Randy Newman, and all those writers that bring in humor into their writing. So I was playing around with that a bit, just because my previous album was so serious, and I was like just trying to think of ways to write kind of more upbeat, fun stuff, but still make it interesting, I guess, or like, I don't know. I find like humor is kind of this like nice lane that fits in between sad and happy. And I really had fun writing them. And when we had our release show in January, I was like, man, this is like most fun I've ever had playing live. Like, usually I'm nervous as hell when I play all the time, but um, when you're playing like songs with humor in them, it just allows you to just lighten up a little bit and have more fun. So it was great.
You were fortunate. Like I guess you guys have the COVID thing a little bit more under control out there than some of the rest of us in Western Canada and Ontario. So did have the opportunity to play a proper show to celebrate the record.
Yeah, and I feel like a spoiled brat anytime I say that, because I do realize the envy of a lot of provinces in that regard. Um, but yeah, I was able to have like a CD release show, which was um, pretty amazing, especially during these times.
That's the only one you've had the chance to do of late, or have you been able to do some more shows since?
Yeah, I haven't played since. I think I'm going to book something for the summer, and um, possibly we'll see like Halifax or New Brunswick, if that's a possibility, if the Atlantic bubble happens. Um, but yeah, so basically, I want to get the album out before the baby came out. So
Right.
I just released the album, and then a couple weeks later, baby came out. So focusing on that for the last couple of months, and hopefully by the summer we'll play some shows.
I guess maybe a little bit more long term of a vision. Would you be open to touring outside of the Maritimes next year if restrictions allowed?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to. Yeah, get out west and Ontario and stuff like that. Would be great.
You probably still got a lot of friends and fans throughout Alberta.
Yeah, I have a lot of. My brother still lives there. I have a twin brother, and he still lives there. He's getting married this summer, so I'd love to get back out to Calgary and just play out there again. And I love Calgary. It was so nice. It just kind of like got bitten by the country bug again when I moved out there, because it's I mean, there's tons of different styles of music, but country music would definitely be the most popular for sure.
You think you kind of found like what you are supposed to be doing as an artist with the country music approach, or is this kind of just something you're going to explore and see what happens?
I've been thinking about that, Sean. Like, whether I like should kind of just like continue to kind of like own this writing style and singing style and stuff, and just I have enough songs to like release another like country album, but they're not. Some of them are just kind of straight up heartache country songs, and some of them don't have humor. So I'm not sure if I should try to gather a collection of songs that have humor in them, or yeah. So I'm struggling a little bit with it, I guess. But that's definitely what I've been writing lately. Has been in the vein of classic country and like Hayes Carll style stuff, like blues country, and it's definitely what I'm most interested in for sure.
I mean, you're a pretty busy guy. You're a new father, and you're a teacher by day, right?
Yeah, by
so
day.
Where
Yeah.
do you find the time like to sit down and write?
So I don't know if it's because of the situation where I tend to write like without a guitar, like just lyrics. So, and by doing that, I don't need to be in a room with a guitar or anything like that. So I've just kind of like any pocket of time that I can find, whether it be like driving to work or usually in the morning, like I'll get up and just lay in bed, just write while I'm lying in bed. But very rarely do I have like dedicated time just to sit for like 3 hours and write nowadays. But yeah, I do a lot of reading and stuff too, because I find that helps fill the well, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. Now, did you write like that before? Like before the child, before you were so busy, or is that something that you've just adapted into since?
No, I've definitely kind of. I mean, I tried different ways of writing, but that's always the way I fell into that way of writing. Um, just because I always struggled the most with lyrics. I always find it's the most, I sweat the most when it comes to writing lyrics and melodies and stuff like that. I tend not to spend near as much time on. Like if I find a melody that works, I'm like, "Oh, that's good." I don't like rhyme off like five different melodies and then painstakingly go through them. It's just so I tended to spend a lot of time on lyrics, and then I find like once the lyric is written, it's like 90% of the song is written for me.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I like that approach, like of, you know, sort of just letting it all out and writing it on the page. And then I guess you just bring it to you wherever your space is and start hammering away on the guitar and try to piece it all together.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm not just like writing a lyric, just like I sing it in my head, and, you know, like lines kind of, you know, like when you're writing lines, they create melodies anyways. Like there's a musicality to lines and songs. So for the most part, the lyric, and then I'll just take that melody to the guitar, and then if I need to adjust anything, but yeah.
And you mentioned Shel Silverstein and Roger Miller and Randy Newman and Bobby Bear as some of the folks that you kind of look up to as far as songwriting is concerned. Are there any other artists that, you know, contemporary artists you really dig on these days?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned Charlie Crockett earlier. I just like obsessed with his stuff and his sound. I love it. I mean, I love Tyler Childers, like that Purgatory album. I really loved that. You know, Sturgill Simpson, Hayes Carroll, Brandy Clark. There were some other, there's so many. I'm going to forget like a key one or something. Like, oh God, why didn't I mention this artist? But yeah, different artists for different things. I've been listening to is it Tony Joe White, and he like, it looks like Dan Auerbach of the Black Keys has an album, or not an album, but a record label that released a couple tracks of his, like Boot Money and Bubba Jones, I think it is, and I've been listening to him nonstop. I just like love the blues country thing that he does. It's just amazing.
Any other like anything you can speak to about the maritime country music community, some other bands or other spots that are sort of important to play as a country music artist out there?
I don't know, to be honest. Like I haven't explored it a whole lot yet because I released the album in January and haven't played around, and I'm just kind of getting into the country world in the Maritimes. There are a few, I'm trying to think of country, like old school country artists in the Maritimes, but there aren't a whole lot. Like Ryan Cook is like the only one I can think of off the top of my head right now from the Maritimes that is doing like the classic country thing.
Got the Divorcees as well out in Moncton.
Oh yes, the Divorcees.
Yeah. And they put their record out, I think, on the same day as you did.
Yeah, I saw that they were kind of going through the same thing I was. I didn't realize they put it out the same day though.
I think it was the same day. I don't know. It's early January for sure.
There's definitely there's a lot of history of country music and stuff in the Maritimes. I just haven't done any digging yet. Yeah,
there's a rich history of it. Certainly Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. I can't speak too much to PEI. It's like, do you feel living out there that you know, you're maybe a little more remote, or you're separated from the rest of the region, or does it feel like the region is all encompassing?
I think it feels like it's all encompassing. It's hard to know because I don't really know anything different. Like just growing up here, it never felt isolating, even though we are on an island, which you would think would feel very isolating. But yeah, it never felt that way to me. It always felt like we were kind of connected with all the other maritime provinces, even though we are separated by water.
It's beautiful though, and for anyone that hasn't done it, like I love driving over that bridge and getting into town, and I've had really good times out there. I haven't been out there too much, and it's been a long time, but it's a really beautiful part of the country.
Like, I mean, in the summer, it's hard to beat.
Yeah.
It can be beat by many spots.
So what's next, man? Like, the record's out. You've put it out. It's been really well received. You've had a number of these sort of interviews and stuff like that. Like, you must be proud and feeling good. And do you have sort of any plans for what happens next?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, very proud of it. Definitely the most proud I've been out of any of the albums I've released, and yeah, starting to feel like I'm finding more of a voice and stuff too that kind of meets or is more who I am. But yeah, a few things. We had PEI had a showcase last week, so we got to present our music to some festival organizers and stuff like that. So hopefully some stuff comes of that. Probably not this summer, but hopefully 2022, I'm able to play some festivals in support of this album and continue to I just kind of want to squeeze as much juice out of it as I can before kind of moving on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. The record sounds really great. You're a fucking killer singer, and it was a great idea getting Grant and Burke involved. They really help, sort of step it up. And I'm sure I know what it's like working with Grant, and he takes your songs to a new place. It's really, really nice.
It's just jaw dropping. I just love, hearing those guitar parts when they came back. I was like, oh my God, like, he's making me sound like professional.
Yeah, I mean, he's given me like a confidence that I didn't know I could have.
Oh, it's so true. And I mean, your records were actually a big inspiration in terms of production, because I basically was just like looking at your records and like, all right, like who played guitar on Sean's records, who played pedal steel on Sean's, who engineered it. I like Sean. So thanks for allowing me to steal all that information.
Oh, they're all independent contractors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today, Scott. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Sean, and for continuing to support me and my music.
Absolutely. It's good to meet you on the telephone.
You're a workhorse, man.
I need things to do, or I'll find myself in trouble.
Fair enough. Awesome. It's great what you're doing for country music.
Thanks, man. I really love it, and it's like great to find new folks and people that I don't know and get to know each other.
Yeah.
Got to stay in each other's corner, man.
It's true. It's very true.
Right on, man. Well, have a great day. Thanks for talking to me today.
Likewise.
Okay, take care.
Sean.
Bye-bye. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed my chat with Scott MacKay. I'll thank him once again for joining us on the show. Listen to Scott's albums wherever you stream music for a nominal monthly fee, or check him out at scottmackay.ca. Follow along with the Northern Report Spotify playlist to hear music from the folks that I've covered in the Honky-Tonk Times column, as well as here on the podcast. Subscribe, like, follow, and share the Northern Report. Our logo was created by Boots Graham of Boots and the Hoots, Central Alberta's finest honky-tonkers. Music on the show today courtesy of Sean Burns and Lost Country, The Divorcees, and Skinny Dick. From local legends to regional stars to the cream of the Canadian crop, you'll find it all here on the Northern Report. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll chat later.
Hey.
Hey, pal, what do you got for us?
Well, I had a few drinks, and as you know, one man's ceiling is another man's floor. Here I sit.